Some cars take their sweet time. Their anticipations make their arrival that much sweeter. When they arrive, some live up to their hype and some fizzle out that easily. And I talk about anticipation because this is the all-new Maruti Suzuki e-Vitara. It's still not launched yet, and I know some of you are still waiting to drive their first ever electric Maruti. So today we are driving it and we are trying to find an answer to one question. Is it worth the wait, or is it too little too late? First things first, the dimension. The e-Vitara is almost as large as the Creta Electric, its direct rival. The styling is new yet familiar with Y-shaped LED headlamps up front, strong character lines all around, a heavy body cladding and 18-inch alloy wheels, and the seductively flared rear wheel arches that definitely looks fabulous from the ORVMs. However, the rear is a bit of an awkward stance to look at in my opinion. The execution of tail lamp bar could have been better, and the tight rear window, a petite roof mounted spoiler and chunky bumpers are all design elements which look great individually but don't come together cohesively. Its road presence might not look as big or imposing as some of its rivals, and that might be owing to this lack of cohesive design once again. However, Maruti says this one has a polyhedral muscular stance, and I can't help but agree to it. Well, looks and styling are subjective, but one thing that's definitive about the styling of this e-Vitara is that it's not chasing after those who like explaining their EVs to their neighbors. It's after those buyers who, like the billion of us Indians, want their EV to work perfectly every single time. And that one aspect of this design tells you what kind of an EV the e-Vitara is going to be. And on the inside, this cabin is in a typical Maruti Suzuki affair. It's not trying to overwhelm or impress you in the first 5 seconds. Now this entire cabin, it's new, entirely new, and we have never seen anything like this in a Maruti Suzuki car before. Yet it still feels familiar. Now I would like to start with the steering, which is a 2-spoke design, which is a first for Maruti. I haven't seen this design in any of the cars before. More importantly, it is flattened out on both the ends, which feels nice to hold, is more sporty, and I prefer this design over what you get in the BE6 with its weirdly flattened steering wheel design. Now talking about the BE6, which is very radical, the e-Vitara is a polar opposite. Everything over here is conventional, be it the infotainment system, which is conventional, be it the center console, which is conventional, be it the instrument panel, that's conventional, and overall everything over here, it feels conventional. What's not conventional, however, is the human machine interface of this gear selector, which I particularly like. As for the seats, I believe Maruti Suzuki makes one of the comfiest seats out there. Take the previous gen Swift for example. Over here as well, you get multiple material over here. There's fork leather, there's a cloth as well, but the overall design of this seat is fabulous. It provides you the right kind of support, and I have spent 770 kilometers behind the wheel and not once it gave me a reason to complain. But if I had to complain, it would be the overall ergonomics or aesthetics of this cabin. For example, putting a hazard button in the center of the dashboard, it's weirdly placed. Even the material used on the dashboard, the piano finish on the center console, and overall the fit and finish, it could have been better. But the biggest complaint I have is from the infotainment and the driver's display screens. Now in a time where manufacturers are giving you triple screens on the dashboard, a large tablet on the center console and whatnot, this feels like a step back in comparison. And even the driver's display, its interface is not as modern as it should be. And my complaint continues to the second row as well. Now, the knee-up sitting position for the second row was the biggest problem EVs faced when they arrived, because the platform they used was basically a conversion of an ICE car. Now, this one uses an e-Hardtech platform, which shouldn't be similar to the one offered in ICE cars. But over here, you have this weird knee position. Even the headroom for my frame, I am 5.6 and I barely have any. Sure, you can adjust the seat back and forth, and there's some recline adjustment as well. There's a flat floor over here, but overall this space, it's fit enough for 2 at most. Sitting 3 here would be a tight fit. You do get a folding armrest with cup holders, a rear AC vent and Type-C USB. That's all the features that you get over here. There's no rear sun blind, there's no parcel tray, there's no rear seat ventilation or even a large panoramic sunroof over here. Even the boot at around 300 liters is large enough by hatchback standards and not by this segment. Its loading lip is rather high too, but fold down the rear seats and it can liberate around 500 liters. As for the features, it gets most of them, but where the competition is offering so much more, it doesn't feel enough. And by now you must be aware that the e-Vitara is already being made in India and exported to the UK market. Now I bring this point up because when you sit behind the wheel, the ride quality, it still feels like it's set up for the European roads and not Indian, because the ride quality is stiffly sprung. You can feel all the irregularities, undulations and everything, and it does start to feel a bit weird. Not uncomfortable for sure. If you have driven the first gen Brezza, the Vitara Brezza from the first gen, the diesel model, the ride quality in that is very akin to what you would experience over here. And if you're spending long hours behind the wheel, that little uncomfort, it will start to creep in. But on the upside, it is an EV, a proper EV, so the acceleration is smooth, it's linear, and overall the driving dynamics, it's very well engineered actually. Now it doesn't feel like it has 170 horsepower on tap, but don't get me wrong, it does not feel boring. It's more restrained because, like any other Maruti, it is restrained for efficiency. But overall, this 170 horsepower, it won't bore you. The e-Vitara, it pulls hard when you yank it, and that's a really good driving dynamics to have, be it for everyday mundane city traffic or when you want to stretch your legs on the highways. Now, as I said, this is an EV, so it needs to have regen setting, and this one does. However, there's one little weirdness to it, is because you have one dedicated button for regen. You press it to activate regen, otherwise there's no regen at all. Now the weird thing again is, once you activate it, you have a display coming up which shows 3 levels of regen. There's low, medium and high. However, once it's activated and on the move, I want to go from high regen setting to low, I cannot do that on the fly. You have to park the car, go into the setting, select the setting from high, medium and low, and then you start driving again. That's a little weird interface that Maruti has put in here. And let me also tell you that this highest regen setting is still no one pedal setup. And like any other modern car, you have driving modes over here. You have the normal, which is not displayed on the MID. Then you have eco and sport. Now eco and normal mode, there's no noticeable difference in the driving, neither the throttle response, neither anything else. But in the sport mode, the car really is sharpened a bit. The throttle response is very quick. It's so quick, in fact, that sometimes it feels a bit twitchy. As soon as you go on the throttle or off, the car starts to twitch a bit. But otherwise, the 170 horsepower, which I earlier said doesn't feel like it, in the sport mode, it does. Now, I've already spoken about the ride quality, but the handling, it's not half too bad. Now, the steering, it doesn't have a lot of dead center. It is smooth, light in weight, easy to maneuver, and it is slightly slow as well, going almost 3 turns lock to lock. So you have to get a lot of turn in if you are trying to push it. Otherwise, for everyday drivability, it's a really nice and easy steering to have. I have done 700 kilometers in it, and never once did I get tired because of the over inputs on the steering. And it's a Maruti, so people have been asking the age-old question, kitna deti hai in a Maruti, a lot. Now here in the e-Vitara, the range is a big question because Maruti claims it would do 543 kilometers in a full charge, but that's ARAI cycle. Now when I did the India Goes Electric drive with this one, on 100% charge, I drove almost 300 kilometers, 330 actually, and then had to park the car at 14% to charge. It had another 60 to 70 kilometers of range left on those 14%. Now that gives you around 400 kilometers of range that I actually have driven this car with. But that you need to remember that I was driving only on highways with maintaining highway speed, no regen, and more importantly, I was also doing triple digit speeds occasionally. However, if the energy consumption, the battery size, the overall dynamics, and the way the car is overall set up. If it's anything to go by, I could tell you that this one in a realistic condition would do anything between 420 to 450 kilometers in a single charge, and that's good enough by this standard or this segment actually. But we will be doing a real world range test of the e-Vitara when we get the car back home. And lastly, we have to talk about the charging. Now on my India Goes Electric drive with the e-Vitara, I only used the e-chargers that was set up at a Nexa dealership. Now Maruti Suzuki has delayed the arrival of e-Vitara for quite some time. Now what they have done is, instead of launching the car first and then setting up the charging infrastructure later, they have done the opposite. They have set up the e-charging station across all the dealership, all the Nexa dealership, and that gives them a really good leverage over the other manufacturers, because as we all know, the sales and service network of Maruti Suzuki is unbeatable in the country. So what they have done is set up a charger there that gives you a good upper hand if you're buying the e-Vitara compared to its other rivals. Of course, the country is still at a nascent stage when it comes to the charging infrastructure. There are still a lot of challenges, but this one is a step in the right direction. Now for the record, both the electric Creta and the Curve, they did around 400 kilometers in the realistic condition under our tested figures. Now 400 kilometers is a benchmark for this segment, and the e-Vitara would actually match it or even surpass it because it is a Maruti. But Maruti delaying this car when all the other manufacturers have already gotten their hands in the game. How well the e-Vitara does it in this segment, that remains to be seen. And talking about delays, the e-Vitara will be launched here in India in January 2026. It's already on sale in the international market, because here in India, Maruti Suzuki needs to get the price right to disrupt the establishment of the cars like the MG Windsor EV, the Tata Curve EV, and even the Hyundai Creta EV. And to do that, it needs to play its strongest card, because the e-Vitara is not the most revolutionary electric car out there. It is the least risky which any other Maruti Suzuki owed to. But the cynicism demands that we ask the hard question. And the question is the e-Vitara too little too late? Because had it arrived a couple of years earlier, it would have been a game changer. But today, the rules of the game have changed, and this one is not moving the goalpost any further. So who is the e-Vitara for? If you are an enthusiast, this won't move your needle. If you want your EV to stand out and turn heads, you will find better options. But if you are someone who trusts Maruti, who wants an EV that behaves like a Maruti, who values reliability over flamboyance, the e-Vitara suddenly makes a lot of sense. It's not without faults though, but would you buy it? And that entirely depends on how Indian you still are on buying your car, because sometimes the one that arrives the last stays the longest. And that's all from me in this video. I hope you liked it, and if you did, do hit that like button and share this video with someone who's looking to buy an electric car and they might consider the e-Vitara for themselves. And if you have any other questions that I didn't cover throughout the course of this video about the e-Vitara or any other car, you can write them down in the comment section below, and I promise we will address them all personally. And that's all from me in this video. This is Bilal signing off. Until next time.